So I have brought you both here today to talk about press. I get a lot of clients who ask me questions about how to get published, how to get their name out there, and I thought that both of you would be great people to talk about or talk with, I should say. Elyse, you kind of bring that perspective of why. And kind of help clarify that. And Brian, you have so much experience with getting people published. I think it's a perfect combination. And then we've got me and my team who, after someone's published, we promote it. However, our strength is not the actual getting people published. That's where you come in. So Brian, can you just kind of give a little background on how you ended up in this field and why you're so good at what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Brian Hart. I am the founder and president of Flackable. We are a public relations agency headquartered in Philadelphia. We represent brands all over the United States, primarily financial services, and within financial services, primarily wealth management firms. We work with a lot of wealth managers. We also work with a lot of service providers who cater to wealth managers, fintechs and so forth, who support what they do. Outside of that, we do also work with a number of firms under the professional services umbrella. Real estate, law, and so forth. We found that even though our model was built for the wealth management community, it can be very adaptable to other industries as well. Why are we good at what we do? Because first off, we practice what we preach. I like to use my own business as a case study for the services that we use. In all my years, we're coming up on 8 years now since I founded the firm, I haven't made a single cold call or cold approach. Every client that I've had has come to me via Google search, seeing our media activity, finding out we won an award, or finding us on an online list. We get a lot of referrals, and even social media. I get a lot of people DMing me on Twitter, and who end up being a client.
Elyse, why don't you give some of your background too? And then I'm going to jump into some questions for both of you that could be helpful for advisors who want to get published.
Of course. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah.
My name is Elyse Stoner. I am the founder and chief strategist with Fresh Perspective Consulting. I started my business about 4 years ago when, quite honestly, I got tired of going to bad events. And what I recognized was it's sort of like a dog, right? There's no bad dog, just bad training. That there's really no such thing as bad events. It's just that they're not being either, I wasn't the target audience, or they really weren't produced with a marketing opportunity in mind. So I work with professional services folks as well to make sure that they have strategy. That when it comes to events or marketing, or in this case, someone says, I want PR, right? I want to be on the news. My favorite question is why, and kind of digging into the strategy and being strategic ahead of time so that Brian and his team and Kalli, your team, can do their jobs. I too am based outside of Philadelphia. It's a long story how I got here, but I am here. And just I'm really excited to be here to use my years of experience in the sports arena, entertainment, marketing world to bring a fresh perspective to folks in their businesses.
First question is for you, Brian. Do you have an opinion on what's better, major or minor local publications?
Yeah, well, it goes down to the strategy and what you're trying to accomplish with the PR campaign. Some people come to us because they want to do a short-term campaign so they can put a big banner on their homepage as featured in. and they want to check off all the bucket list items, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, CNBC, and so forth. And we do campaigns like that. We're very good at them. With that, yeah, we're going for the bigger major publications. For other campaigns, they want to target a very niche audience. For example, I work with a lot of service providers who cater to the wealth management community. So for them, they want to be in Financial Planning Magazine. They want to be in Investment News. They want to go directly to those audiences with their value proposition and their core messaging.
When it comes to value proposition, what is something that they need to have in place before talking to you? Do they need to have anything in place?
Yeah, I mean, they should have a value proposition, and some of them haven't fully formed it, and we'll work through that with them. But we want to know, one of the questions I always ask when I'm onboarding a new client is, what gets you out of bed in the morning? What are you fighting for? That's our value proposition. That's what we're going to. What are the pain points of your target audience?
Yeah.
How are you solving that for them? Don't start with the solution. Start by empathizing with them and understanding the problems of the audience you want to tap into. Then bring out your solution at the end.
So I have a question kind of as it relates to this, right? And we're thinking about this value proposition. How often do people come to you saying, I don't know, but I know that somebody told me I should do this? Again, or, I saw my competition doing that, so I need to be there as well.
Yeah. Well, when I talk to advisors specifically, the wealth managers that we work with, and they struggle with the value proposition, usually when I ask for it, they give me a very, very lengthy answer, talking about what they do, how they do it, blah, blah, blah. They never get to the why. And I know, and Elyse, I know that's your specialty. I'm a big believer in that. It's all got to start there. And a lot of them, once you rewire their brains to think that way, they are way more confident at talking about the value that they bring to a relationship.
And I think again that that why piece of this, and you touched on this because I find this with a lot of my clients. As it pertains to events, their why is, well, we've always done it, or again, somebody recommended I should. And I always feel like that's not a great answer, because like you said, you're not invested in it. Your why is a story, it's an anecdote, it's what I refer also to as your unique selling proposition. Like, what is it about you that makes you different than the other financial advisors that you can see as you walk up and down the floor of the office building back in the day when we did that sort of stuff. And then that, to me, is where you start.
They need to know what their goal is. Then they need to have a value proposition. Is there anything else that needs to be in place before getting published?
If we're talking about marketing strategy, absolutely. They need a website. I mean, some people, come to me and their website looks like it was built in like 2010, 2005, maybe.
1872.
Right. So, if you're going to invest in PR, I mean, make sure you've got a brand that I can go out and sell for you. The better branding and marketing infrastructure that you have coming into a PR campaign, the more you're helping us, the more success. It raises the ceiling of the campaign. If you don't have professional headshots, that hurts us. And it's funny. I mean, I see these financial advisors who will go out and have, $50, $75 lunches every day. And I tell them, it's really time to get a professional headshot. And they won't do it. They won't spend on headshots. But yeah, I mean, clean up the brand. I mean, get your website tightened up. Give me, a good brand that I can take out there. I can obviously help you develop some of those branding aspects, and we do coach our clients on that. And we can help. A lot of what we do is help them integrate all the great PR work into their brand to make it better. That's one of the main reasons why they hire us. But give us a good, solid foundation to start with, and you're going to have a much higher ceiling for your campaign.
What is the process? So we're working together and I say, I want to check off, Bloomberg and Forbes and whatever else. What then happens? You reach out to journalists at these publications, or, what's the process?
Sure. Yeah. So, we'll go through a discovery process with them, and beyond all their core messaging, I identify some of the, key storylines, the big news stories out there where we can connect the dots between that and their expertise. The big stories that are being covered by the publications that they want to be in, that we anticipate those publications will be covering, or stories that are interesting that they should be covering, but they aren't. Those are the types of things that we can take to some of the big publications to make the argument as to why they would be a good source, why they can be on there. So identifying, those thought leadership platforms before the campaign even starts, so that day one, we're on the phone, we're shooting out messages to our contacts, and we're building new contacts, depending on the type of messaging we want to put out there. That's absolutely essential to going in. Now, I will add to that. One of our advantages being so niche is that because we've built so many great, very, very close relationships with certain reporters, editors, and so forth, half the time they're coming to us saying, hey, we're writing about this. Do you have somebody who can speak with me on the phone at 3:00 today? Because they know that we've got a stable of financial experts. So even if it's niche, a very niche topic that they're covering, they know we can at least reach out to our people and find somebody who might be a good source for them.
I think that that's also a really good point. And I know that each of us have had this conversation with the other, but now's a great time to also bring that out. Those relationships and that experience and expertise is a reason that a lot of our clients work with us. I often joke around and I say, everybody, when I say I work in events, people are like, oh, you're a party planner. Whole different ball game. But and it's something that people get excited about. Like, who doesn't love to plan a party? My response was, and is, by hiring me to do whatever it is, the strategy or working with partners to put your events together, I'm allowing you the time to do your day job. And the space, like Brian's saying, that he's got these relationships where people in the media are coming to him asking for sources. How long would it take a financial advisor to create that relationship on their own? And, and to just say, hey, it takes a village, and that the village doesn't necessarily have to be everybody that lives under your website address, right? And that's the value that all of us bring to this community, to say, you know what, we can save you time, and we save you the pitfalls, right? It's a whole separate webinar about like where we've tripped and fallen and what we've learned from those. And by bringing our expertise, they don't have to do that.
That's right.
So I think that that's a really great point that you're saying, Brian. This is very, these relationships that you have are very two-way. And that I don't think a lot of times people think about that. They just go, oh, I just called the financial reporter at the Business Journal in my city, and of course they're going to want to talk to me. And saying, well, they have people like Brian in their Rolodex who maybe they'll return your call if you're not Brian, but they'll definitely return your call if you are Brian.
And I'll tell you what, I have seen some financial advisors do it themselves and do it very successfully. I've seen others who try to do it themselves, and I kind of use this analogy. I say, listen, can you do it yourself? Anybody, you don't need a license to practice PR. Anybody can do it.
Right.
Anybody can call themselves a PR person. So if you want to do your own, go for it. But I say, if you're doing it to save money, you can cut your own hair to save money, but you're probably going to look like you cut your own hair.
Right.
So, but no, I mean, for most people, especially those who are just getting started or new to it, they can save themselves a lot of frustration. They can save themselves pitfalls. Mm-hmm. They can save themselves from maybe saying the wrong thing to a reporter or having an improper exchange that ends up getting published, because they tried doing something they weren't really necessarily trained how to do.
And if you are one of those sources, or you want to become a source, you're kind of building that up. Is there anything that a journalist looks for in a source that an advisor can be thinking about, as kind of that strategy part of building the brand? There are things you could put on your website in advance. So is there specific things that the journalists look for?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, when we're talking about financial advisors, I mean, there are certain TV segments, shows, and other journalists, especially when it comes to markets reporters, where they look at AUM, and they've got a set AUM. If you're below that AUM, you're not getting on that show. Not all of them. There's a lot of other opportunities. And so when I have clients who are below, a certain AUM threshold, we don't waste our time there because we already know what the answer is. Or we'll make sure that we have something super unique or compelling when we do go to them, because even if they have that fixed rule, sometimes there are exceptions. But if we're giving...
I had no idea that was a thing that they even considered. So that is...
They'll look at your broker check too. Some of them will look at your broker check. And if they see even the smallest mark, it could be a barrier. So again, if we know that you have that, we don't waste time.
Yeah.
Going to those publications, we already know which ones have those types of barriers.
Right.
We're going to go to the places where you will be successful. There's a lot of media out there. That's the beautiful thing about this day and age. There's new media shops popping up every day. New streaming news channels. Every month there's a new one. So there's a lot of there's more media opportunity out there than ever before. But yeah, I mean, that's very important. Now, what else do you need to be successful? A lot of them will look at your website. So if your website makes your brand look small or makes you look unprofessional, that could be a barrier. They look for people who, I mean, if we're talking about TV, you've got to look and sound good on TV. You've got to have fun. You've got to remember to smile. You have to remember that TV is entertainment. I mean, yes, you're informing them, but make it fun.
If I want to get on TV, does it matter what I look like?
I think it's a very valid question.
Yeah. It is. They want you to be, dressed appropriate for it and so forth. Yeah, absolutely. I will tell you that a lot of networks are very committed to making sure that they're portraying diversity on the screen.
Yeah.
They're not going to have a white man on that market segment every day of every week.
Right.
And the networks are getting better at not doing that.
Yeah.
Because there was a day and age where that's all you'd see on some of these networks. So props to them. And I know for a fact these producers really do value that and do a better job upholding it than years past.
I've got a question, if I may. We're talking about media, and not to get too dorky, right? That media is the plural of medium. And there are all these new media coming up daily, monthly. What advice do you give your clients as it pertains to the variety of media? Thinking about streaming, thinking about vlogs, thinking about podcasts. Like, where do you run on the continuum of all of that, Brian?
Yeah, well, I mean, Elyse, this goes back to your wheelhouse, because we always establish, what do we want to accomplish with this campaign? So if they want that big bucket list, that big banner on their website, we're not going to send them opportunities for smaller niche blogs that their audiences might not be familiar with, or, very niche podcasts or so forth. Now, if they've got a hybrid strategy, they might want that big bucket list, but they might also say, hey, Brian, we're really trying to get more traffic to our website. And I'll say, well, you need some backlinks. You can only keyword optimize and optimize the backend so much. You've got to get backlinks out there to signal to Google that you are actually a relevant site.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case,
thank you for saying that, Brian.
I was gonna say, you're speaking Kalli's language there.
Well, so when that's the case, and it should be the case, backlinks should be incorporated into any decent PR campaign when there's a website behind it, especially when we're dealing with small businesses. In those situations, we might recommend that niche podcast if we know we're getting a backlink at the end of it, and we know it's got a decent domain authority, or that smaller blog or so forth. If we know we're getting that golden black backlink.
Talking about getting on TV and podcasts and maybe local stuff, does it help or hurt, or does it matter if you have your own stuff going on already? Like, what if someone already has their own podcast? Is that going to help or hurt them getting interviewed on somebody else's podcast?
Well, it helps the PR agency, absolutely. We love clients who produce their own content because they're feeding us story ideas. We don't have to pry them from them. If they're doing a weekly blog or even a monthly market commentary, that's perfect. We can from one of those, we can usually put together 3-4 different story angles. If they're on a podcast, even better. We can take that and turn it into a bylined article. Get published in Forbes or Business Insider or whatnot. So producing their own content helps us as the PR person. Now, Kalli, you mentioned, does it help or hurt getting them into, similar mediums? If they've got a podcast, is their podcast going to help them get on the other person's? There are usually some quid pro quos that go on there. So you have them on yours, they have you on theirs. You guys get to cross-pollinate each other's audiences. That happens all the time. It in that instance definitely helps. It also helps just showing that you're comfortable in that medium. So if you've been writing a weekly blog post, a good quality weekly blog post for a year, and then you call me up to hire me, you say, all right, I want to go big time with PR, I'm probably going to take your blog and put it in front of Forbes editors, whatnot, to pitch you as a contributor. And now you show that you can write weekly, that you're a good writer, you're a reliable writer, all the qualities that they're looking for. So that can absolutely help. No, as long as it's good content, you can't give me enough of it.
I want to spin in the other direction, if you will. When I'm working with my clients, one of the areas that we talk a lot about is the call to action and what you're going to do after the event is over. And oftentimes, when I'm talking about events, I use it as an umbrella term. So appearing on a podcast is an event, as much as it is, bringing in a guest speaker for a group of clients. And you touched on this a little bit, Brian, but I think this is really important, that the event shouldn't end once the screen is shut down, or, again, back in the old days, once people leave the room. Can we have a little conversation? Because I know, again, we've all had these conversations separately about Brian works his magic and he gets these great exposures, and then it sits somewhere maybe on somebody's YouTube channel, like way in the back, or they don't know what to do with it. What are some of your favorite ways, both of you, to talk about the follow-up, what happens after, how people can use this to really get the mileage above and beyond the people who happen to catch them on Bloomberg or see the banner on their webpage?
Yeah. Oh, you're preaching to us. And Kalli, I'll say one little thing and let you take it away.
Sure.
But we call this credibility marketing. It's 2 parts. The first part is earning that media coverage, earning that third-party credibility by having won an award, or appeared on TV, or been published, somewhere. That's all earning third-party credibility. Very powerful thing. But once you have that, you want to leverage it. You need systems in place to leverage it and maximize it and funnel it to your target audience. Because if your target audience is a little town, let's say you're focused on Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and you were just in a story that went to print in the Wall Street Journal. Are there people in Pittsburgh who are going to read that? Absolutely. Is every prospect, or is your network going to necessarily pick up the paper that day and find it on their own? No. So Kalli, what do you do to get it out to them?
Oh, I do everything.
Yeah.
You name it, we do it.
Right.
Yeah, you want to make sure you're hitting both your prospects and your clients. I think people kind of forget about their clients a lot, but your clients are the ones who become your advocates and really kind of, they're your choir. Not only are they, yay, you did it, but they're going to tell people about it. Hey, my advisor was in Bloomberg or Wall Street Journal or wherever it was. So I think it's important to email it out to your clients. It's important to have a printout in your office. So when people are in the waiting room, there's something for them to look at. Make sure you're including the logos, brand names of the publication. So it's not just here's an article, it's here's an article that was in XYZ. Then you also want to make sure you're putting it out there for the prospects. So on your website, in a banner, on a blog article, social media, if you have a prospect, email. And I would say even go beyond just that newsletter email blast. You want to also have a drip campaign where you're nurturing your leads, people that you've already made a connection with, and you're kind of strategic in when they're getting communication from you and what it's going to be. So after you've met with somebody, maybe not immediately after, because that would feel kind of awkward, but maybe a few weeks, you're going to reach out and you're going to say, hey, I don't know if this is something that interests you, but this article relates to something we talked about. And here I am talking about this very subject, kind of establishing again that credibility, because we all know advisors know what they're talking about. They've done the education, they've gotten the certification, they have experience. But the people that they're meeting with, they need that extra boost of confidence to put their trust. And I think that's where, Brian, you earn that credibility, and then we got to push it out. Make sure people know. Also, email signatures, that's another place you can add things. As seen kind of thing.
Yep. And Elyse, I'll go back to your specialty. I mean, with events, when you're a keynote at an event or whatnot, what's the first thing they put up? Your professional bio.
Right.
So if you're coming off some big awards, if you've been published, or if you're let's say you're an ongoing Forbes contributor, for example, it's a great bio piece to put in there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And touching on that, one of the things that I love to talk to folks about too is when you're a keynote speaker, what's your marketing plan as a keynote speaker? All of this creates a much bigger picture, right? And it all starts to interconnect, because I've been in this publication and this is going to help me get this keynote speaker thing. And then when not only am I introduced as the speaker who has also been seen in, then that gets me something else, or you don't know who's in the room, or it is all interconnected into that much bigger space, which the good news, bad news is you could spend all your time kind of juggling all of that. But obviously at the end of the day, you still want to be serving your clients and making sure that as you're doing all of those pieces, that you're really keeping that target audience front and center. So it's not just, I've been here, I've been there, I've done this, I've done that. And people go, that's great, but you're not my cup of tea, right? Like you're not my person. And that message then gets lost, coming back to the, hey, it's great that we've promoted all of this, but if we're not promoting it to the right audience, those people are going to walk out of the room going, well, why are you telling me this? I don't care. But again, it's, you know, we talk about so much, and I know that we're all on this page of strategy, and how many of us have had conversations with potential clients who only see what's right in front of them and say, I want to do this. And we all say, but why? As I joke around, I'm like, I'm the biggest 3-year-old in the room, right? Why? But we all are, because then we can understand why they're doing it, what their goal is, and help tune everything in for everything that they're doing. And that's going to focus on that why.
So what's a good newsworthy story? How does someone find a good PR angle? I mean, I know you're going to ask a lot of clarifying questions to find that, but you know, we're going to help make your job easier. Tell us what we should look for that we can tell you about.
Yeah, no. So there are several elements that reporters look for in a story. Just like earlier, how I was saying, you know, when you're trying to figure out the value, why you should pursue a particular PR opportunity, are you looking for backlinks? You know, do you want to get a message across? Do you want to reach your target audience? There's so many different, you know, variables to it. You're never going to find that PR opportunity that hits all of them. Doesn't happen. You're never going to hit every single element of value from one PR opportunity. But if you find that there are enough good positives for it, then yeah, you know, I usually recommend let's do it. Let's go for it. So with news stories, it's the same thing. There's a lot of different elements and variables. No news story is going to hit on all of them. But I mean, a couple of the big ones are timeliness. You know, I don't go to reporters, you know, for somebody to react to the jobs numbers, you know, the Monday after those numbers were released. I should have been reaching out to them ahead of time saying, hey, I've got somebody who can do a reaction immediately when they're released. So timeliness is very important. Proximity, you know, is it happening? You know, what does the publication cover? Where is their audience? And is it relevant to them? You know, a big story that happens here in Philadelphia might not be as big of a story in New York City. They're not that far away, but it's a different market. If it's a big enough story, it might be. But proximity matters depending on how you know, significant of a story it is. Impact, and that ties into what I was saying. Impact's another variable. What are the consequences of this story? How many lives is it going to impact? Prominence, is there a big name related to it? Oddity, is there something funny or weird about it that's going to catch people's attention? And relevant, I mean, is it relevant to the readers? How is this relevant to the readers? How is this angle I'm taking to a reporter relevant to what they cover? So important. And then the last one is something I like. It's not for everybody. I work with some firms who avoid this and never want to comment on it. Others embrace it. I embrace it whenever I'm interviewed in the media. Conflict. People love reading about conflict. Reporters love when you give them stories that feature conflict. So again, no story angle is going to touch on all of those. But if you've got enough of those elements packed into it, you probably got a pretty good angle.
So I'm curious, when you say conflict, is it like conflict that has a resolution and that's the story? Or is it two sides of the coin, sort of a, you know, I think of the old Saturday Night Live, like point, counterpoint, you know, is it, I'm looking for someone who is looking to create a divergent or has a divergent opinion than the norm? Like, how would you define conflict?
Yeah, well, conflict would be a storyline that, so it wouldn't necessarily be that if they're being interviewed as a source for the story, like as an expert looking at it from the outside, it wouldn't be them creating the conflict. It wouldn't be my client creating the conflict. It would then be commentating on a situation where there's conflict.
Okay.
So anything that happens in Washington, D.C., there's usually an element of conflict, right?
Right.
Never.
And I don't have my people, I don't have my people politicking unless it's part of their brand. Most of the time it's not. But there are things that happen, tax policy and so forth, that their clients care about.
Right.
And they can look at it and analyze the policy and the impact of the policy, not get into the mud of politics. So typically that's how we'll position them when we do go into those. But yeah, I mean, when certain things happen, when there are two sides, with different interests in mind, and that's the story that we're commenting on, it's probably a pretty good story angle. Now there are ways to create conflict too. We don't do a lot of that. I mean, there's certain PR stunts where we can do an op-ed where we're calling out a person or an organization, for example. Now that would be where we are actually the ones creating the conflict. If you're putting out a very critical op-ed, that would be where the client's creating the conflict.
Right.
And again, that sells too. But
Right.
we have to be very selective and strategic with how we pursue that.
You mentioned timeliness. What's a good time?
So one thing that I love about financial services in particular, and I know I've been talking about that a lot just because that's our space, but I love these financial services campaigns because so many of the things that happen that the market reacts to are on a schedule, like the jobs numbers, like earnings reports, earnings season, proxy season. There are so many things that are on a calendar, so we can get ahead of them.
Yeah.
And position our people to react immediately or be ready to pounce to talk to the client right after it drops, get their opinions, and then roll that out in the reactions. So in that case, we can be extremely timely. We can be getting ahead of the story before the story actually happens. So we love doing that, and we're very good at that. But yeah, I mean, there are certain things that you have to be reactionary to. Every day, there are several unexpected things that happen in the market.
Sure.
Or even just from a financial planning standpoint or whatnot. I mean, there are unexpected things. I mean, February 2020, we were all very naive, right? Most of us were. I was. And then something happened and we had to react. And it was an evolving story where you just had to constantly just monitor and react.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, when you can't predict something, when the story breaks, you want to jump on it as quickly as possible. You don't want to wait till a week after it happened, because it's already been covered. And the news cycle's, becoming more and more rapid, because of things like Twitter. Where now, I mean, you see news happen in an instant. I could be on my Twitter feed and know that on the other side of the country, over in Los Angeles, there's an earthquake. While it's happening, while the ground's shaking for them, because people are literally tweeting about it.
With video.
Yeah. So I mean, news is so instant right now. You gotta be fast.
How soon do they need to be able to get back to a reporter? If they have client meetings all day, is it okay to get in touch at the end of the day, like that kind of thing?
It depends on their deadlines. It depends on the publication and just how quickly they work and the reporters. So it's all different. And I mean, we have a lot of clients who have run very, very busy schedules where we do need to schedule most of what we do in advance, where a same day phone call would be very difficult if it's not already blocked off. For those campaigns, we typically don't go after the breaking news stories. We'll do more trend commentary and things that have a longer shelf life than the immediate news story reaction. We have a lot of our campaigns. We take that. A lot of our campaigns have a compliance part to it, where they can't just jump on the phone with a reporter the same hour. they've got to get the okay before they take that phone call. So no, I mean, we just get to know our clients. We get to know their comfort zone, what they can accommodate, what they can't, and we plan the strategy around that.
My last question here is, how in demand are advisors in the news?
Oh, very. I mean, what thing I love about the work that we do is that anything that's happening in the world, celebrities, sports, geopolitics, I mean, you name it, everything's got a money angle to it. We are professional dot connectors when it comes to jumping on, newsworthy things. Now, we do a lot of thought leadership campaigns as well. So the thought leadership campaigns, it's not all just talking about breaking news. We do a ton of thought leadership, where we're talking about bigger, longer trends, writing pieces on it, getting our clients profiles where they're just talking about themselves. They love that. But no, I mean, there's so many different ways. Again, it all starts, Elyse, I mean, back to you. It all starts with the why. What are we trying to accomplish from the very beginning? And then we build a strategy around that. Some of them want to be that CNBC markets person who gets on there and comments on the market news of the day, and we build campaigns around that. Others would much rather, publish thought, more general thought pieces and trend pieces, and focus more on press releases around their own announcements. We cater to those campaigns as well. It's all about what we want to accomplish.
I think that's really important, because I do think there is this mental picture of saying, like, TV, for example, has to be the breaking flash commentary, and in a lot of ways, absolutely, because that's what TV does, right? It's quick, it's fast, it's sound bites, it's all that, but it's not the only way to get the coverage. And again, when you understand your why and you really dig into that and your target audience, that sort of combination drives you in any of the areas that the three of us cover. Whether it's, okay, now we can do our marketing that way. Now we can do our PR campaign that ties into our marketing. Now we can understand what we need to do with our events, and then how we're going to promote that, or we're going to utilize, Kalli, I know you and I have talked about this in the past. Like, I have these pictures from an event. What do I do with them? Like, what's that strategy look like? And how do we then maybe use that with Brian to talk about, we did this great philanthropy event, and we're going to put that into the PR campaign because it's part of our strategy to show that we care about the community, and people who invest with us care about their community, and it shows up in a local newspaper. Like, there's really, at first I think people are like, there are these three heads on the screen, kind of what's going on here. But really what we all do supports each other. And obviously we're all then rowing in the same boat to help our clients maximize, as I always say, maximize the marketing value of whatever activities that they're doing.
Do you guys have any final comments or notes you want to include?
I'll go back to one of the big things that we touched on, credibility marketing. You need to understand, if you are going into a PR campaign, public relations is not advertising. If you want advertising, there are places that do that. We don't do that. Advertising is, when you talk about, commercials or paid ads in a publication or on online publications, that's not what people go there to read. It's something they come across while they're going for the content that they want to consume. So we don't put you in the ads. We put you in the content. We help make you the story. You the expert within that story. That's a big distinction. So public relations on its own, without attaching it to any marketing, it's not going to have the same impact as advertising. Because advertising, you put in a call to action, you can send them directly to your website. It doesn't work that way with PR. Even when they do a nice, beautiful profile on you, they're not selling it. You'd have to pay for advertising if you want that call to action. So while we earn that third-party credibility, and we're very good at it, you also need to have a means to integrate that third-party credibility, all the PR value that you've gotten, into multiple verticals of your marketing plan in a systematic basis. That's where you get the full impact from it.